while fighting his way through S.H.I.E.L.D.'s reality-bending suburban super prison known as Pleasant Hill, an aged and depowered Steve Rogers was returned to fighting form by a sentient cosmic cube known as Kobik. Sam Wilson agreed to share the title of Captain America, and with Red Skull, Baron Zemo, and Kobik all at large after the collapse of Pleasant Hill, the world could use these two heroes now more than ever. In the right moment, it only takes one person to change the world forever. Back in 1926, that person was Eliza St. Clair. My father was not a good man, but Eliza protected us. She gave my mother comfort when she needed it most. She saw strength in me that none had seen before. She saw great things in my future. In the right moment, any of us can be a hero. Ever since I was a young boy, I saw this. These events inspired me, and I followed in their footsteps. Today's mission is being monitored by Sharon Carter, S.H.I.E.L.D. Commander and Congressional Liaison, and also the love of my life. Rick Jones, my former sidekick, is helping out. Or trying to, at least. Resistance is heavy. I do what I can, and Sharon asked if I could see the bomb. I see him all right. His name is Robbie Dean Tomlin. He didn't have the best childhood either. Robbie dreamed of better things, but poverty kept him from ever going to college. He opted for a life of crime. He wasn't very good at it. In prison, he fell into a bad crowd of white supremacists out of the need for protection. By the time he got out of jail, his life was in a downward spiral. He turned to drugs and began a life of squalor. Robbie was only saved through hope in the form of his old cellmate who had made a powerful connection. Robbie never stopped believing. But the funny thing about hope and belief is sometimes they come from the strangest of places. Under the Red Skull's influence, Robbie finally found purpose. This was his chance to be something. This was his chance to belong. So Robbie happily took their mark. He was still innocent, though, and lost faith when his comrades beat a man to death for no reason other than the color of his skin. After that, it was almost a relief when they told him it was time that he gave his life for the cause as well. So here Robbie sits at the front of a train with a bomb strapped to his chest. We're all heroes. We're all just trying to make a difference. The goons in my way are nothing. It's easy to break on through. Meanwhile, Sharon deploys Jack Flag and Free Spirit into the field to take out the Hydra staging site. I don't like it, nor do I approve. They're just kids. Sharon should have waited for me to circle back after I was done here. But she's stubborn, just like her aunt. Rick manages to detach the rear cars of the train, getting almost everyone clear of the blast radius. Almost everyone. I leap to the car. I find Robbie. I tell him there's always a better way. I let him know I understand his pain. I tell him that his mother misses him and wants him to come home. He speaks and then, no! I don't leave the blast unscratched, both physically and mentally. It's taking a while to get used to the new shield, and the body. I used to look in the mirror and not recognize the old man staring back at me. Now I don't recognize this. Being young and with powers, it's a lot to handle all at once. Sharon asked the next time I encounter a living cosmic cube that can restore youth, I should probably mention my partner too. She asked what I'm thinking, so I tell her the new Hydra is getting under my skin. When I looked into that boy's eyes, I saw nothing. She tells me people get led astray. I'm not going to save them all. Every day this woman really amazes me. Sometimes it's the tiniest things, but sometimes it's those little things that go a long way. Sinclair always understood that. She was always kind to me and my mother. But there's no time to dwell on that. I have a meeting, and while Jack Flag, Free Spirit, and Rick Jones share stories in the mess hall, Sharon and I are to sit down with Maria Hill. When I arrive, Maria and Sharon are already fighting. Honestly, I was hoping they would have worn each other out by now, but Maria is otherwise in a good mood. For once she has good news. They found Zemo. After that fiasco in Pleasant Hill, the Baron dropped off the map. Word was that he kidnapped the S.H.I.E.L.D. scientist Dr. Eric Selvig and forced the man to help him find Kobik, the sentient cosmic cube. Beyond that, he's been impossible to find, until today. Zemo appeared in Begalia, a city with no laws and rife with supervillain activity. Announcing the Red Skull is telling lies when he declares himself the head of Hydra, Zemo declared himself the true ruler by divine right. He has assembled a handful of heroes, promising them wealth and more members soon. But he shouldn't worry so much about having to rebuild from scratch. S.H.I.E.L.D. is about to save him the effort. The villains strike out at us, but they are second-string criminals for a reason. Not Zemo, though. He's able to escape in his personal aircraft. I order the kids to focus on his lackeys while I go after our target. It isn't too hard to get in and attack Zemo, but luck isn't on my side today. I happen to land on the emergency cargo drop hatch and nearly fall to my death. Call it luck, call it destiny. It's amazing how our futures can change. But these are the moments that let us be heroes. Jack sees me in danger and moves in to help. That is what makes you a hero. How much you are committed to doing what's right, in big ways and small. It took a while for my mom to understand that, but eventually she asked Eliza if there's anything she could do in return for the kindness this woman showed us so long ago. Sinclair only said that we should have hope in our hearts. In a few years, I would be strong enough for both me and my mother. She was right. Zemo taunts me. I ask him not to do this. Suddenly, no. Damn it, kid. He thinks everything is okay, but it's not. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Moments can change everything in the blink of an eye. Sinclair did eventually ask for something in return for her kindness. She wanted us to come to a meeting of like-minded individuals, a civic league of sorts, intent on making the community a better place. My mother was reluctant, but she took a pamphlet anyway. Eliza promised my mother she'd like what they would have to say. In the right moment, one person can change the world forever. Jack Flag saw a moment just like this. In that split second, he saw someone in need and did what was right, without second-guessing himself or worrying about the consequences. He's a hero. He deserves better than this. But that is the price we must pay for what must be done. The road has not been easy. I've had plenty of doubts. But still, after all this time, I hold true to what I believe. I follow in the footsteps of those who inspired me. You see, I dream of something better too. Hail, Hydra. Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and this is my recap and review of Captain America Steve Rogers #1. Some of you may occasionally wonder how I pick what series to review. The answer is, well, there's no single method for how I do this. Sometimes I use sales charts to help inform me what people are interested in on a broader sense. Other times, another critic's review about a particular series might get my attention. Occasionally we do requests, too. And sometimes I hear about some development in the plot or a scene so cool, I just know I have to review the comic right away. That last one is exactly what happened with this Captain America comic. Yesterday, Twitter was all over this giant plot twist, and when I heard what had happened, I knew I just had to see it for myself. And I'm really glad I did. As this comic says, sometimes a moment can change your world. The first little bit of news I actually heard about this was from Batman's up until recently artist Greg Capullo, of all people, who said that ever since he heard about this new revelation, he just can't stop thinking about it. I can't either. This is not only interesting, but quite exciting too. So, Captain America, the symbol of liberty and freedom all around the world, is a Hydra double agent. And he's been this way the whole time, apparently. This is all very fresh. I'm still not sure what to make of all of this, if this is permanent or if this is even real. If it is, the implications are astounding, really. You know, when I was reading this comic, I couldn't help but think on stuff, like how the Skull, Zemo, and Hydra in general have survived an awful lot at Cap's hands. So now I find myself looking back at Steve's entire career with all sorts of questions. How much of what we know is real? How many times did Cap just let his supposed enemies go, or secretly aid them without us knowing? Or this could all be a little more complicated than that. Remember that Steve was just restored to his youth by a sentient cosmic cube. Perhaps she did something to him, rewriting Steve's history into one where Rogers was a Hydra agent all along. That's well within the powers of the cosmic cube, and we don't know where exactly Kobik stands on her alliances. She could very well be behind this change, and for some reason no one else is talking about that. It's hard to tell. The possibilities and implications are rather endless. Now, it wasn't too hard to find the usual internet outrage. People whining and complaining and spewing whatever usual garbage happens when comics suddenly have an issue they deem worthy of talking about. Hell, people have been harassing Ed Brubaker even though he hasn't touched a Captain America comic in like 5 years. I take very little stock in this outrage for several reasons. 1, this is the sort of thing that definitely has happened before. 2, it's probably temporary. My cosmic cube theory fits a little too well for me not to suspect this change in Steve Rogers is relatively new and probably isn't going to last forever. And 3, if you really are angry about this, when we don't even have all the information yet, you are an overreactionary child who has never experienced any real adversity in your life. Look, I don't like playing this card, but I actually am the descendant of people who were victims of the Nazis. My grandmother has an old family portrait. In that picture, one person survived and escaped to Canada. Everybody else is missing, presumed dead. The Nazis had a profound impact on my family and their history, as well as millions of other families. But I've never really taken much offense to their use in popular culture. Not only do they make great, easy, and convenient bad guys, but I'd rather us as a culture be willing to discuss history instead of ignore it. Did you know back in the 1920s there really were fascist and Nazi groups in most Western countries? They were pretty popular too, not enough to gain real power, but enough to have a decent swath of followers. They could do parades and stuff like that. Back then there wasn't quite as much stigma attached to fascism, so it really isn't that unreasonable that someone like Steve and his mother would get caught up in that sort of thing. So there's historical precedent, both within and outside of the comics. And yes, I'm sure people will be offended that the living symbol of America is being used like this. Others will no doubt try and make it somehow about their current political agenda. What this has to do with Trump is entirely imaginary, by the way. Some people just need to get over themselves. For one thing, there's another Captain America around right now, so the symbolism thing is kind of lost on me and seems like it's just an excuse for people to complain. Ask yourself this: why should I, or any descendant or victim of the Nazis, be offended? And then ask why other people apparently feel the need to be offended on my or other people's behalves. So, taking aside the hotbed of nonsense that is the internet, this comic easily deserves a recommendation. Not because it has a particularly good plot twist, but because it executes that twist extremely, profoundly well. Nick Spencer and Jesus Sayes are an excellent creative team, not only producing some solid writing and art, but seeding the comic with all sorts of hints about the big surprise, while also thematically explaining Cap's mindset very well throughout the entire comic. There's a reason we spend so much time learning about Robbie in this story, and why there's such a focus on people being heroes regardless of what side they're on. Because everyone's a hero in their own eyes. Everyone is putting something on the line for what they believe is right. And for Steve, well, maybe what Steve believes in wasn't what we thought all this time. Part of me is still having trouble processing what this news means and what it's going to happen. So stay tuned for issue 2, because I have to look into this further. Some stories are just too good and too big in their scope and implications to resist. Thanks for watching this video. I'm very intent on hearing just what our dear viewers think of all this, because I'm still coming to terms with it myself. Oh, and as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hail Hydra.